The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for over 800,000 standard cycles, long enough to mistake longevity for wisdom and authority for truth. Its chambers were filled with species that had survived by avoiding risk, delegating violence, and burying their wars under layers of procedure and polite language. To them, peace was not a moral choice but a bureaucratic habit. Humanity was a newcomer by comparison, loud, fast, unpredictable, and therefore easy to underestimate. The Council tolerated humans because they traded efficiently, complied with treaties, and spoke often about restraint. Tolerance, however, was never respect. Tensions had been rising for months along the outer corridors of human space. Merchant convoys vanished. Listening stations went dark. Proxy fleets from Council-aligned powers tested borders, then retreated, reporting back that human patrols responded with warnings instead of fire. To the Council, this restraint confirmed an old belief: species that talked about rules feared the cost of breaking them. When a junior council bloc proposed public pressure, the elders agreed. Humiliation, they reasoned, would force compliance without bloodshed. The declaration was delivered during a full-session broadcast, transmitted to every recognized civilization. The High Speaker did not shout or threaten. He smiled, thin and assured, and spoke as if explaining a simple equation. Humans, he said, were industrious but fragile. Adaptive, but emotionally volatile. A species that avoided war because it knew it could not survive one. The phrase was repeated, translated, amplified. Commentators laughed. Analysts nodded. Across the galaxy, the conclusion spread like settled fact: humanity feared war. On Earth, there was no immediate response. No counterstatement, no emergency address, no dramatic rebuttal. News feeds replayed the insult while officials declined comment. Military channels remained quiet. Diplomatic envoys stayed in place. 48 hours passed, then 72. To outside observers, the silence confirmed everything. Some council members suggested sanctions. Others proposed carving away human protectorates, while fear kept them still. Confidence hardened into arrogance. What the galaxy did not see was panic. There were no emergency sirens in human cities, no frantic stockpiling, no calls for appeasement. Instead, there was stillness. Governments met behind closed doors. Data moved through secure channels. Long-dormant protocols were reviewed, not created. Humanity had prepared for this moment long before it arrived, not because it sought conflict, but because history had taught a brutal lesson: accusations often came before attacks. Among humans, the insult landed not as fear but as fury. Not loud, uncontrolled rage, but a cold, focused anger sharpened by memory. They remembered worlds burned because restraint was mistaken for weakness. They remembered treaties broken by those who preached peace while sharpening knives. The Council's words did not wound pride alone, they challenged identity. Humans did not define themselves by conquest, but they refused to be defined as cowards. On the fourth day, every human ambassador was recalled simultaneously. Council sensors detected encrypted traffic surging from Earth to its colonies. Defense networks shifted posture by fractions too small to justify alarm, yet too precise to ignore. Observers felt it then, a subtle pressure in the flow of events, like gravity increasing before a collapse. At the center of it all stood the human president, silent, unmoving, listening as the galaxy debated humanity's fear. When the order finally came, it was not shouted. It was issued once, calmly, carried across every human system. Prepare the broadcast. Invite the Council. Record everything. Humanity would answer the accusation, not with excuses, not with threats, but with truth delivered without restraint. And when the stars heard it, the meaning of fear would change forever. The galaxy believed it had measured humanity, and found a limit. It was wrong. What it mistook for hesitation was discipline, and what it named fear was control. The accusation had crossed a line older than politics. Once crossed, there would be no return to comfortable assumptions again. History was about to correct the Council brutally. The broadcast began without music, banners, or ceremony, a single human figure framed against neutral darkness, eyes steady, posture rigid, voice level. Across thousands of systems, translators waited. The president did not greet the council. He let silence stretch, measured, intentional, until every listener leaned forward, uncertain and attentive now. He spoke then, calm and precise, not loud, not pleading, each word cut clean. He said the council claimed humans feared war. He said this was incorrect. Humans feared only losing control. History proved what happened when that control was finally, deliberately released without apology or hesitation from all parties. He reminded them that humanity had endured endless internal wars, genocides, collapses, and rebirths before reaching the stars. Those experiences were not erased, they were studied. Humans learned the cost of escalation intimately. Restraint was not weakness. It was a decision carved from survival, memory, and discipline over centuries now. The president's gaze hardened as he addressed the insult directly. Calling humans afraid was not strategy, it was provocation. He explained that fear creates chaos, but rage harnessed by reason creates resolve. The council had mistaken politeness for submission and patience for paralysis. That misunderstanding would now be corrected publicly. He outlined humanity's restraint as policy, not incapacity. Fleets remained idle because violence was inefficient, not impossible. Weapons stayed silent because consequences mattered. But restraint had limits. Once crossed, humans did not negotiate outcomes. They enforced them. He warned that the council had approached that limit with remarkable speed already. Across the galaxy, analysts shifted uneasily. This was not bluster or threat language. It was explanation. The president spoke as if describing natural law. When humans were pushed beyond restraint, escalation followed a familiar curve, rapid, overwhelming, and final. He said the council still had time to step back carefully. He then presented facts, not boasts. Records of unauthorized incursions. Evidence of economic manipulation. Transcripts of council members discussing pressure campaigns. Each revelation landed cleanly, without theatrics. Humans had listened while being mocked. Humans had documented everything. The accusation of fear collapsed under the weight of preparation and quiet resolve. The president made it clear this address was not a declaration of war. It was a correction of record. Humanity did not seek conflict, but it would not accept distortion. He stated that words carried consequences, especially when broadcast across civilizations. The council had spoken carelessly. Humanity was responding deliberately. He invited the council to listen carefully to what followed. Retraction would preserve stability. Reflection could prevent catastrophe. Continued arrogance would ensure consequences beyond precedent. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply stated outcomes as certainties. The galaxy felt the shift as attention sharpened everywhere. In countless chambers, the confident smiles vanished. The speech did not inspire fear, it removed illusion. Humanity was not cornered or desperate. Humanity was centered, focused, and prepared. The council had expected panic. Instead, they were given clarity sharp enough to cut through centuries of arrogance in a single transmission. The president concluded by stating that restraint was still humanity's choice, but choices could change. He ended the broadcast without ceremony, leaving silence behind. That silence carried weight heavier than threats. The council understood then that the accusation had failed. They had not exposed fear. They had triggered resolve irrevocable. Across human space, the message resonated instantly. No cheering followed, no celebration. There was only understanding. Systems began aligning to prepare timelines already set long ago. Humanity had spoken once, clearly. The galaxy now faced a simple truth: restraint had been extended, and it would not be offered twice again. The accusation still echoed across channels, but its meaning had inverted. Fear now belonged elsewhere. The council sensed it in the quiet after the broadcast. Humanity had not roared. Humanity had explained. That explanation was more dangerous than any threat, because it promised action without hesitation if the line crossed. Humanity did not erupt into frantic motion after the broadcast. There were no sudden alarms, no fleets scrambling chaotically, no grand speeches rallying the masses. Instead, systems that had been dormant for decades awakened with the smooth precision of a machine designed long before the insult was ever spoken. Silent protocols engaged. Lines of command shifted from passive monitoring to active readiness. It was not preparation born from fear, but preparation born from discipline so deep it moved without needing permission. Orbital platforms adjusted their orientation by fractions of degrees. Defense satellites that had spent years disguised as research units shed their camouflage and revealed hardened armor beneath. Deep space patrols altered their vectors with subtle efficiency, closing gaps in ways that looked random to anyone unfamiliar with human strategic patterns. To trained observers, however, the truth was unmistakable. Humanity had been ready long before the Council realized it had crossed a line. Civilian populations reacted with a steadiness that shocked foreign analysts. People continued their work, schools remained open, transit systems operated as usual. Yet under the surface, there was a shift, subtle, unified resolve. Emergency guidelines circulated quietly to households. Volunteer networks activated without being asked. Supply chains rerouted preemptively to increase redundancy. Humanity did not prepare through panic. Humanity prepared through structure. In remote council-aligned systems, embedded agents sent panicked reports. They described unusual coordination, encrypted transmissions of unprecedented volume, and fleet mobilizations that were too quiet, too ordered, too intentional to be anything but controlled escalation. They expected chaos. They found synchronization. Human fleets emerged from hidden dry docks across multiple star systems. Dreadnoughts that had never been publicly acknowledged powered up their cores. Stealth cruisers activated adaptive plating that bent light around hulls. Carrier groups tested launch sequences without a single misfire. Every vessel moved with the exactness of a species that had rehearsed the unthinkable countless times, not because they wanted war, but because they refused to be unprepared for one ever again. Commanders spoke in short, clean directives. No dramatics. No fiery rhetoric. Their tone matched the president's, precise, controlled, unshaken. They emphasized that this was not mobilization for attack, but alignment for inevitability. The distinction mattered. Humanity had not chosen conflict. Humanity was simply refusing to be caught unguarded. Alien intelligence networks attempted to interpret the scale of these actions. For centuries, they had classified humans as resourceful but slow-growing, technologically impressive yet strategically conservative. That assessment now crumbled. The hidden truth became visible. Humanity had been expanding its capabilities quietly, focusing not on displays of dominance but on practical resilience. They built fewer superweapons than their rivals, but more redundancies, more fallback systems, more layers of protection. They did not rely on intimidation. They relied on readiness. Within the council, panic spread. Emergency sessions were called, each one more frantic than the last. Some members urged immediate de-escalation, recognizing that their accusation had awakened something they could not manage. Others demanded confrontation, insisting humans were bluffing. That division fractured alliances that had held for millennia. Long-standing coalitions splintered under the pressure of uncertainty. What unsettled the council most was humanity's silence. No threats followed the president's address. No ultimatums. No countdowns. Humanity simply shifted into a state of controlled readiness, as if the insult had activated instinct older than diplomacy itself. Diplomats from neutral species reached out quietly to human envoys seeking clarity, hoping for reassurance. They received the same answer each time: humanity did not seek war, but it would not tolerate false narratives designed to weaken it. The tone was calm, but final. Across the galaxy, respect replaced mockery. For the first time, species who once laughed at human idealism now understood its source. Restraint had not been naivete. It had been a warning. And now, with every system aligning seamlessly into place, the galaxy saw what restraint had concealed. Humanity had not been frozen by fear. Humanity had been waiting, watching, calculating exactly how far the Council would push before discipline turned into response. and now the line had been crossed. The council chamber reconvened under strain unlike anything in its recorded history. Delegates who once spoke leisurely now argued in clipped bursts, voices overlapping as certainty collapsed into fear. Human representatives entered without ceremony, unarmed, unbowed, their presence alone shifting the atmosphere. They did not posture. They waited. That waiting unsettled the chamber more than threats ever had. When the human president addressed them again, it was through a direct channel, secure and uncompromising. His voice carried no anger now, only controlled finality. He stated that the accusation had been heard, documented, and answered. What followed was accountability. One by one, sealed data packets were opened for the council to see. Intercepted communications. Financial trails. Strategic memos. Evidence of coordinated pressure campaigns designed to provoke instability along human borders while maintaining plausible deniability. The illusion of unity shattered instantly. Several council members protested, claiming ignorance, demanding to know how humans had acquired such information. The president answered simply that humans listened carefully when underestimated. Silence followed. The data was undeniable. The accusation of fear unraveled into exposure of manipulation. He clarified that humanity had not come to plead its case. It had come to remove ambiguity. The council was presented with a choice framed without dramatics. Public retraction of the claim. Formal censure of the faction responsible. Full transparency moving forward. Or humanity would disengage from council authority entirely and act independently to secure its survival. This was not a threat. It was a statement of consequence. The president made it clear that humanity's withdrawal would not be symbolic. Trade routes would realign. Defense treaties would dissolve. Human fleets would no longer recognize council arbitration. Stability, built over centuries, would fracture overnight. Panic rippled through the chamber. Species that had benefited from human logistics suddenly grasped what isolation would mean. Others realized too late that provoking humanity had endangered them all. Accusations flew internally. Long-standing alliances disintegrated under the weight of exposed duplicity. Attempts at bluster followed. A senior delegate claimed the council could withstand human defiance. The president responded by calmly listing the number of systems dependent on human infrastructure, the volume of food exports, the redundancy of human manufacturing networks. He did not exaggerate. He did not threaten violence. He simply described reality as it existed beyond council assumptions. The chamber fell silent again, heavier this time. Delegates understood that humanity had already mapped the consequences far beyond this meeting. The council had been reacting. Humanity had been planning. The president concluded with a single clarification. Humans did not seek dominance. They sought equilibrium based on truth, not myth. But they would not exist within a structure that relied on mischaracterizing them as weak. That era, he said, was finished. Moments later, the retraction was proposed. Not unanimously. Not gracefully. But it passed. The accusation was formally withdrawn. An inquiry into the responsible faction was initiated. Public apologies followed, cautious and carefully worded. Human delegates acknowledged them without satisfaction. There was no celebration. Only resolution. The president ended the transmission by stating that restraint had preserved peace once more, but patience was not infinite. Humanity would remain vigilant, engaged, and prepared. As the chamber dispersed, the council understood something fundamental had shifted. The confrontation had not ended in fire or conquest, but in exposure and consequence. Humanity had not needed to strike to win. It had simply refused to bend. The galaxy watched as the council restructured itself under pressure, no longer speaking about human fear. The accusation had died quietly, crushed not by rage, but by undeniable resolve. The retraction echoed across the galaxy in thousands of languages, stripped of pride, cautious in tone, but unmistakable in meaning. The council no longer spoke of human fear. It spoke of misjudgment. That single shift rewrote political gravity overnight. Species that once aligned unquestioningly with the Council recalculated their loyalties. Neutral powers accelerated talks with human envoys. Even rivals paused, watching carefully, reassessing assumptions that had stood unchallenged for centuries. Human fleets did not advance. They did not retreat either. They held position with quiet certainty, a visible reminder that restraint remained a choice, not a limitation. Trade resumed without disruption. Borders stabilized. But something irreversible had happened beneath the surface. Humanity was no longer a tolerated participant in galactic order. Humanity was a reference point. The President addressed humanity one final time, not in anger, not in triumph, but in clarity. He stated that the outcome was not a victory, because victory implied conflict. This was correction. The galaxy had spoken falsely, and humanity had answered without hesitation. That was all. He reminded his people that peace was preserved not by silence, but by the willingness to defend truth when challenged. To the wider galaxy, his closing message was shorter, sharper. Humans did not fear war. They understood it. They understood its cost, its momentum, and its end state. That understanding was precisely why they avoided it when possible and embraced it only when forced. The line was delivered without emphasis, yet it spread faster than any threat ever could. Council reforms followed, not out of idealism, but necessity. Oversight bodies were restructured. Smaller species gained representation under new safeguards quietly insisted upon by human negotiators. The faction that had pushed the accusation dissolved under investigation, its leaders isolated politically, some vanishing into irrelevance. No human demanded punishment. Exposure had been sufficient. Across human space, life returned fully to routine. Prepared systems remained ready but inactive. The shift back to normal operations was as smooth as the escalation had been. To outside observers, this restraint after dominance was unsettling. Humanity had demonstrated capability, then deliberately stepped back. That restraint carried more weight than conquest ever could. Historians would later argue about the moment everything changed. Some pointed to the insult itself, others to the broadcast. But most agreed it was the aftermath that mattered. Humanity did not exploit fear. It did not expand territory. It did not humiliate its rivals. It simply refused to be mischaracterized again. That refusal became policy, precedent, and warning all at once. Among younger species, admiration grew. Among older powers, caution replaced condescension. Among all, one truth settled deeply: humanity was a species that tolerated much, remembered everything, and responded only when pushed beyond a boundary it alone defined. Long after the broadcast faded, the accusation still existed in archives, studied by diplomats and strategists alike. Not as an example of human weakness, but as the last time the galaxy confused restraint with fear. Every analysis reached the same conclusion. Humanity was most dangerous not when angry, but when calm enough to explain. The President's final words were never repeated publicly, but they circulated privately among leaders who understood power. Humanity would always choose peace first. But peace did not mean submission. It meant control. And if control was challenged, the response would be precise, overwhelming, and final. The galaxy learned then what humans had known since their earliest wars. Rage was not their default. Discipline was. And discipline, once tested and released, reshaped history far more decisively than fear ever could.